For decades, it felt like the global economy was on this unstoppable path, right? More connection, faster trade, deeper integration, but something's changing. It feels like we're in the middle of a huge global shift, what some are calling the Great Unwinding. The very rules of international trade are being rewritten as we speak, so let's get into what that really means.
And really, the whole thing boils down to one central question. Why are so many countries suddenly turning inward? Why are they building up what you could call economic walls? That's what we're going to break down today.
So to really understand what's going on, we need to start with the big ideas. We're seeing this fundamental rewiring of the world. A major shift away from the globalization that, let's be honest, most of us grew up with, towards something new called economic nationalism.
So what exactly is economic nationalism? Well, at its heart, it's a country basically saying, hey, our economy comes first. It's all about putting your own domestic industries, your jobs, and your resources at the top of the priority list, even if that means backing away from international agreements. It's a huge departure from that free trade for all mindset that was the rule for so long.
Here's a really simple way to picture it. For years, the global supply chain was like this one massive, incredibly efficient assembly line that just snaked its way across the entire planet. Now, countries are basically deciding to break off their part of that line and bring it back home. They're creating smaller, more local assembly lines. Now, they might be less efficient, but the goal? To make them more secure.
So, the big question is, why now? I mean, this shift didn't just happen overnight. It was actually a series of powerful shocks to the system that, one by one, chipped away at the world's faith in a totally globalized economy.
And when you look at this timeline, you can almost see the dominoes falling. It really started back in 2008 with the financial crisis, which showed just how risky it was for everyone's financial systems to be so tightly linked. Then, boom, 2018, the US-China trade war kicks off, and suddenly protectionist policies like tariffs are back in a big way. But the real massive wake-up call for everyone, that was the pandemic in 2020. All of a sudden, we all realized how vulnerable we were when we couldn't get essential things like masks or computer chips from the other side of the world. And honestly, the geopolitical shocks since then have only hammered that point home.
So this new way of thinking has led to a completely new playbook for how governments are dealing with the global economy. They're literally rewriting the rules of trade with this nation's first agenda.
Now, what's really interesting here is how it breaks down the tools governments are actually using. So you've got tariffs. Those are basically just taxes on imported goods, and they're designed to make them more expensive than the local options. Then there are quotas, which are just a hard limit. A country can only import a certain amount of a product, and that's it. And finally, you have subsidies, which is when a government gives direct financial help to its own industries to help them compete against foreign companies.
And we can see exactly how the world's biggest economies are putting this playbook into practice. Take China. They have their Made in China 2025 initiative. It's a super clear strategy to dominate advanced tech by building up their own domestic champions. Meanwhile, the United States is focused on reshoring. That's bringing manufacturing back home and using new agreements to strengthen regional supply chains and rely less on manufacturing from overseas.
Okay, so this isn't just about high-level politics and trade policy. This whole shift has massive, real-world ripple effects that are being felt by businesses, by investors, and yeah, by all of us as consumers.
For anyone who's investing, this new world is a real double-edged sword. On one side, the risks are pretty obvious. You've got geopolitical instability, fragile supply chains, rising inflation. It creates a ton of uncertainty. But on the other side, these very same problems are creating some incredible opportunities. There are huge new markets popping up in reshoring and manufacturing automation to make local factories competitive, and in sustainable tech as supply chains get shorter and more transparent.
But okay, let's bring it right down to our everyday lives. What does all of this actually mean for your wallet and for what you see when you go shopping?
So, here's the crucial part. You're probably going to see higher prices for some imported stuff as tariffs and shipping costs start to bite. But you're also going to see more made locally or made in America tags on the shelves. There's also a higher risk of shortages or delays if supply chains get tangled up. And maybe the most interesting thing is this growing sense of national loyalty that's starting to change what people actually decide to buy.
And this isn't just a guess, the data really backs it up. This whole policy shift is mirroring a real change in public opinion. In huge markets like France, Germany, and India, a majority of people now say they feel the world is too globalized. And in the US, you're seeing skepticism toward international trade really start to climb. It just goes to show you that this political push has some deep public support behind it.
This whole phenomenon actually has a name. It's called consumer ethnocentrism.
And it's just the idea that our own sense of national identity and loyalty can directly lead us to prefer products made in our own country over foreign ones. It's becoming this incredibly powerful and often really emotional force in the market that businesses just can't afford to ignore.
So where does all of this leave us? Let's take a look at what the future of global trade might actually look like now that we're trying to chart a new course in a much more fragmented world. The new reality is this. That explosive growth in global trade we saw for decades, that's probably over. We should probably expect slower, more careful trade growth from here on out. We're also seeing a huge shift away from those massive, all-in trade deals with tons of countries, and a move toward smaller, more strategic deals between just two nations, or a small group of close allies.
But this doesn't mean a total collapse of global trade. Not at all. A lot of people are calling for a new approach, sometimes calling it a Washington Consensus 2.0. The idea isn't to just retreat into total isolation, but to build a new framework, one that focuses on coordinated efforts among allied nations, to make sure there's fair trade and to work together on key technologies. It's about finding a balance between national interest and trusted partnerships.
And that really leaves us with the ultimate question for this new era, doesn't it? What is the right balance? How much should we prioritize national resilience, the ability to stand on our own 2 feet, versus the very clear benefits that we've gotten from decades of global cooperation? Finding the answer to that question is going to define the global economy for years to come.